What's going on, guys? Let's say that you've decided to take the plunge and really get involved with custom car audio or custom vehicle fabrication. One of the most powerful tools that you can own for custom car audio fabrication is a woodworking router. Now, if you watch my videos, you know that I use this tool in virtually every single video. It's a really powerful tool to have on hand. Now, there's lots of different options out there for woodworking routers, so I know that finding the right one can be a little bit of a challenge, but there's a couple of different features that I think are really important to have for car audio. In this video, I'm going to show you my pick for the best router for custom car audio. This router is great for professionals, but it also has one very important feature that makes it an excellent choice for those of you that are on a budget. I'm also going to show you guys how with less than $10 in materials, we can take this router and turn it into a router table. Let's jump on in and take a look. So here it is, my main spinny squeeze, the Porter Cable 890 series router. Now, before I start talking about this, just like any of my other videos, this as well as some of the other stuff I'm going to talk about in this video is linked down in the video description if you want to check it out. So the 890 series router here from Porter Cable, this is a 2 1/4 horsepower router. It has variable speed, which you can see up at the top here, which allows us to go from 10,000 RPM all the way up to 23,000 RPM. And it also has 2 different collets. That way we can use 1/2-inch collet bits, and we can also use 1/4-inch collet bits, which are all of the most popular different bits that I use. They're all either a 1/2-inch or a 1/4-inch. Plenty of power in this guy. We've got plenty of flexibility as well with the varying speed and the different collets, but anyone can read the spec sheet and compare routers. What really sets this guy apart? When I first started building custom car audio, I vividly remember the day that I got my first router. I bought the cheapest one I could find, and while it worked, there were a couple of things about it that really bothered me and really made it kind of a pain in the butt to use. So one of the first problems is it was loud as heck. The thing would literally sound like it was screaming when I was using it, and it really didn't have any power whatsoever. When I'd be going through a workpiece machining down wood, it would literally bog down. It would be like, and then it would start chattering. It just wasn't a good experience. I could cut 1/4-inch wood and maybe even 1/2-inch wood, but cutting 3/4-inch wood was really difficult. And if you guys have ever built anything in custom car audio, you know that a lot of the boxes that we make are gonna usually be around 3/4 of an inch in thickness. Also, any sort of height adjustment where I'd actually adjust the motor down into the base was really difficult to do. It didn't have any sort of speed adjustment, so I couldn't adjust for using different materials. And worst of all, it only had a 1/4-inch collet, so it really limited what bits I could even use. So I had bought the cheapest router I could find, and at the end of the day, it ended up causing me more trouble than what it was worth because I couldn't make things the way I wanted to. The results of my projects weren't as good as they should have been. And to be honest, when you're using a tool that doesn't really have enough power to get through a workpiece, it's not really the safest thing in the world. Now, another day that I vividly remember was the day that I got the 890 series router. As soon as I started using this thing, I literally just wanted to punch myself in the face for not just going for it and just biting the bullet and doing it sooner. This thing is awesome. Now, this thing does have one really awesome feature for those of you that are on a budget, and I'll get to that in a second. If you're not familiar with a router is always going to have a base, and then it's also going to have a motor. So let's quickly actually pull the motor out here so I can show you guys. So like we talked about earlier when we were talking about the specs of this thing, it is 2 1/4 horsepower. So this thing is more than strong enough to get through some of the thickest of materials that we would ever throw at it. Additionally, the technology built into this thing, I forget what they actually call it, but it's kind of like an adaptive speed rate, which let's say that we're working into a workpiece and it does start to bog down. It does actually adjust for that automatically internally in the circuitry, and it actually just doesn't get bogged down. It just keeps power, it keeps going. It's one of those things you kind of have to just experience. You have to have a crappy router and see how horrible it is and then use this, and let me tell you, you're just like, whoa. Something else that makes this really nice for car audio is we're always using a variety of different router bits. I'll use small bits like this, I'll use small flush trim bits, but I can even use really massive bits like this monster bit here to add a 72-degree chamfer. So this is a big bit. And if your router is a fixed speed, you don't want to be using a huge router bit like this. It can be dangerous. You actually need to turn the speed down. So having that variable speed right here gives us that option. Additionally, when we're machining different materials like aluminum or acrylic or wood, we want to be able to have the ability to adjust that speed. This router gives us that ability. Next up, let's take a look at the base that comes with this thing standard. So this is just your standard base that of course has some nice ergonomic handles on it for if you are using it in a handheld type application. But something else about using a Porter cable router that I really recommend for car audio is this is kind of the industry standard for a router bracket that attaches to the bottom of this base. Now, why does this mounting pattern standard even matter? Well, there's a lot of different jigs that we like to use in custom car audio, a couple of them being these guys, the Jasper Circle Guide and also the Mobile Solutions Perfect Circle. Both of these tools are used to cut a circle into your workpiece, which obviously for car audio with speakers and subwoofer cutouts, we're going to be doing that quite a lot. The Jasper Circle Guide gives us incremental adjustments. We can pick the center pin location based on what size circle we want to use. And the Perfect Circle also has a pin, as you can see right here, but this gives us infinite adjustment. So if you're gonna buy a router, you definitely want to make sure that you get one that's compatible with those different devices since we're gonna be using them so often. Now, what's the number one thing that I really love about this router and the reason that I think it is a great choice for those of you on a budget? It's the fact that Porter Cable also makes this. So what's super cool about this is if we take our stock router with our stock base, you'll notice that it has a hole right here. If we put this in that hole, what it does is it actually reaches down to this location. Now, if I loosen this lever on the base, watch what happens. I'm gonna hold it here and I'm gonna turn this. I don't know if you can see that. Watch the router motor. See how it's going up? What this is, guys, is this is a super cost-effective way to make yourself your own router table. If you've watched any of my videos, you've probably seen this before. This is a router lift, and I'm gonna pull this out so you can kind of see what's going on. You can see here's my 890 series router, and it's attached in this router lift. Now, this router lift is awesome. I can't recommend it enough, but the one problem with this router lift is it is expensive. Now, this, on the other hand, is not very expensive. This is actually extremely budget conscious. So how can we take this and turn it into a router table? You guys are gonna love this. So if I take the router base off here, I've got this scrap piece of wood here, and I've got my router base. Let's just find the center real quick. Got the center. I can use these lines on here to roughly center it, draw myself a circle, and then I'm just gonna mark those 3 mounting holes. Got myself a cheap little hole saw here. We'll drill the 3 screw holes for the mounting holes. Then we're gonna take this little countersink bit just so that our screw heads will sit down below the surface. So I've made these couple of extra holes, and the reason for that is if we turn this around here, not only does this thing actually adjust the height of the router, as you can see right here, what it also does, and this is super smart of them to do, it allows us to lock the height adjustment from the top of the table. Now, you could have done all these different holes in an existing workbench surface. You could also make a big hole in an existing workbench in order to drop this assembly down in. What I'm gonna be doing, I made this in a previous video that I'll link here on screen. This is actually what I use to rough cut all my stuff for my jigsaw, and it actually has dust collection as well. I can connect this to a shop vac or to my dust collection system. And I can also make a separate hole for the electrical cord, but in the meantime, we can just drop this whole assembly down in here like so. So we can see right now it's actually locked. If I go ahead and drop this down in, I can actually unlock the lever. And then on this side, I can actually raise the router bit up and down. Now, something else worth noting here is Porter Cable also makes this. This is a plunge base. If we take our motor that we already have, this is something that we can buy separately and upgrade to in the future. And you can see if we line it up carefully here and drop the motor down into the base, lock it in position, we now have a plunge router. And this is what's really handy and nice to use with something like the perfect circle if we're going to be cutting a lot of circles, because we can attach that, and then what we can do is literally, you can see right now, the cutting bit is up above the work surface. Let's say the table is the work surface. We can literally plunge down into the work surface. We can lock it in position. We can make our cutting pass, whatever that is, whether it's a straight line or if it's actually a circle going around. And then once we're done, we can release the lever, come out of the workpiece, and we'll have our cut hole. So at the end of the day, this isn't the cheapest router out there, but I hope you guys take my advice and understand that if you plan on doing more than one car audio install in your whole life, in my opinion, it's really, really worth it to just bite the bullet and get this guy from the start. And it actually kind of is more budget conscious and cost effective if you think about the fact that you can make yourself a router table right from the get-go with this particular router. My goal is to have you guys join into this hobby and also experience the fun and excitement that comes along with building something custom for your own vehicle. So I hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope that you consider getting yourself a router, hopefully the Porter Cable 890, so that you guys can do some of these different custom techniques. If you're new here on this channel, I do car audio reviews, I do build log videos, and I also do techniques and lessons. So if you enjoyed this video, I would love to have you as a subscriber. A special thanks goes out to John, Brian, Ali, Jerry, EJ, Emmanuel, Truman, James, and Colin, and the rest of the Patreon support team. A big thanks to those guys for helping crowdfund the making of these videos.